Okay, so in the book of Exodus, there's this really strange and powerful moment. God looks at a whole nation of former slaves and gives them this wild new identity. He calls them a kingdom of priests. I mean, what on earth could that possibly mean? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today, piece by piece. Yeah, right off the bat, you're hit with this huge puzzle. I mean, how can an entire nation, we're talking regular people, farmers, parents, laborers, how can they all be priests? And what's this holy nation business about? Well, the text we're digging into suggests that this isn't just some old, dusty question. It's actually the key to a much, much bigger story. All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at that puzzling identity. Then we'll hit rewind and check out the original blueprint for humanity. We'll ask what holy really means and see how God's presence is the game changer. After that, a quick tip on how to read these stories, and then we'll see how it all comes together as one big story of restoration. Okay, so let's set the scene for a second. Imagine this. The people of Israel have just pulled off this incredible escape from Egypt, where they'd been slaves for generations. Now they're out in the middle of nowhere, this huge desert, standing at the base of Mount Sinai. And it's right here, in this kind of wild and scary place, that God tells them something that will define them forever. And here's the big one. This is the big one. You will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Now, notice the wording. It's not, hey, try really hard and maybe you will become this. No, it's a statement of fact. You will be. This is who you are now. But, and this is crucial, the sermon we're looking at points out that the real secret, the part we almost always skip over, is in the line just before this. And that simple phrase, you are to belong to me, it changes everything. See, this whole kingdom of priests identity, it's not something they have to go out and earn. It's a direct result of something that's already true. They belong to God. Think about that for a second. The logic isn't become priests and then you'll belong to me. It's the other way around. Because you belong to me, you are a kingdom of priests. The belonging comes first. The identity flows from that. Now, to really get the full impact of this promise, the sermon says we actually have to go way, way back, like all the way to the beginning of the story, back to humanity's very first job description in the Garden of Eden. So you read this verse, and it sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Like God's telling the first humans to do some gardening, work it, and take care of it. But here's the thing. The source text explains that in the original Hebrew, those words are, well, they're loaded. They have a much deeper, more sacred meaning. These aren't just farming terms. They're actually terms of worship. And here's the mind-blowing connection. The very same Hebrew verbs for work and take care of used here, they're used later on to describe what the priests do in the tabernacle. So what does that tell us? It means humanity's original job, our original design, was to act as priests in the sacred space of God's world, living and serving right there in His presence. But that original priestly role, it was lost. When humanity decided to define good and evil for themselves, they were cut off from that sacred space, from that direct presence of God. That connection was broken. And you have to understand, that broken connection is the whole reason the promise at Mount Sinai is so important. Okay, let's pivot to the second part of that phrase, a holy nation. Now, holy is one of those words we hear a lot, but it might just be one of the most misunderstood ideas in the whole Bible. And the sermon we're looking at argues that most of us come at it from a completely backwards direction. No, seriously, just for a second, how do you think something or someone becomes holy? What's the first thing that comes to mind? Is it about being morally perfect? Trying really, really hard to be good? Never breaking any rules? Well, the Bible's answer is actually radically different. And honestly, it's way more interesting. So the common idea, right, is that holiness is an achievement. It's like a ladder of moral perfection that we have to climb all by ourselves. But the biblical idea, it's completely different. It suggests holiness isn't about what you do. It's about who you're near. It's something that happens to you just by being close to God. So the big takeaway here is that holiness isn't something we achieve, it's something we receive. It's a gift. It gets transferred to you, kind of like heat from a fire. It's not a prize for good behavior. And if you want the perfect example of how this works, we just need to flip a few pages forward in Exodus. Right, let's talk about the tabernacle. This was basically a super intricate portable tent that served as God's dwelling place right in the middle of the Israelite camp. and it acts as this incredible real-world object lesson for how holiness actually works. I mean, this one verse really says it all. God says the tabernacle will be consecrated by my glory. So what makes it holy? It's not the fancy materials. It's not the amazing craftsmanship. It's consecrated, which just means it's made holy, by one thing: God's presence showing up. Think about it. This whole thing was built out of pretty normal stuff: wood, cloth, some metal. There was nothing magical about the materials themselves. The tent didn't earn its holiness by being so well made. It became holy the instant God's presence moved in. The holiness was literally transferred to it. And that is the perfect picture for what God is saying to the people of Israel. He calls them a holy nation, not because they were perfect. Believe me, if you read the stories, they were far from it. He calls them holy because he chose to come and live with them. Their holiness was just a reflection of being near his. Okay, so to help pull all these ideas together, the sermon offers a really practical tip for how we read these ancient stories. It says that a lot of the time we get stuck simply because we're asking the wrong question at the wrong time. And the advice is super simple. Step 1, just focus on what happened. That's it. What did God do? What did the people say? Then, step 2, try not to immediately get bogged down asking why. Don't get lost trying to figure out God's hidden motives. Because when you just observe the what, you see God rescuing people, giving them a new identity, choosing to live among them, you start to see the big picture. You see his plan taking shape. But if you jump straight to speculating about the why, you can actually miss the really clear story that the what is trying to tell you. All right, so let's pull all these threads together now. We started with that original priestly job description back in the garden. And then we saw this incredible promise of a priestly kingdom at Mount Sinai. Well, the sermon's big conclusion is that these two things aren't just random, they are two parts of the exact same story. So here's the bottom line. The whole priestly kingdom thing at Sinai, it's a rescue mission. It's God's grand plan to restore the very thing that was lost back in the garden. He's calling a people to pick up that original human purpose again, to live and serve in his presence, to be his representatives, to be priests for the rest of the world. And that takes us right back to where we started, to that one foundational phrase: you are to belong to me. This is the source. Everything else, the restoration, the purpose, the holiness, the entire kingdom of priest's identity, it all flows from this one simple, powerful truth: belonging to God. Which leaves us with a pretty huge question to think about, doesn't it? If this is all true, if your identity is fundamentally a gift that comes from belonging and not something you have to earn or achieve every single day, how does that change things? How does that change how you see yourself, how you see God? It's a question that really could change, well, everything.